Welcome again to our frequent podcast called Wear Many Hats, inspired by Ethan Hawkey. Throughout the year, I, David Punter, the Business Development Director for Hawkey Cleaning and Support Services, shall be interviewing prominent facilities management and procurement subject matter experts across a range of industry sectors. It is these people with their wealth of knowledge and experience that we hope will inspire the next generation of young professionals. Our objective is to share our guests' stories and experiences to help motivate, engage and inspire others into the industry. Through Wear Many Hats podcasts, we hope our listeners will gain new perspectives, insights and learn about strategies to develop their careers in the procurement FM business. It gives me great pleasure to introduce...
Hi, I'm David Stevens. I'm a Director of Estates, Facilities and Capital Development in a NHS trust, and I'm also a board member of CIBSE, the Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers.
Thank you very much, David. We're pleased to have you on board. What I'd like to do, without further ado, I'd like to jump into some questions, a little bit about your journey into the FM arena. So, what was your journey and how did you enter in your career in FM world?
I think, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to come along. This is a fantastic opportunity for those that are looking to either start a career in FM or already working within FM. My journey into FM, I suppose like a lot of people, it was quite circular. I left school not having a particularly successful school career, if I can phrase it that way, and became an apprentice electrician.
Okay.
And I realised quite quickly whilst working on it, my first project was working on a school development with no roof. And I enjoyed the first few months of it. And then when I was working in winter in a building with no roof on, and the people working around in their nice hard hats and suits, looking very warm, I decided I wanted to be the person in the suit and not the person in the overalls. Not to say that disrespectfully at all, but I realised that perhaps there was something else out there for me. College, I found a lot easier than school. Okay. I think when I was studying something that had a direct benefit to what I was doing, was a lot more enjoyable. And quite quickly, the grades were coming in very, very good. And always with that mindset of how can I be the person in the suit? I moved quite quickly from being on the tools to being in the design office and then doing my design qualifications, eventually leading and giving up work to go to university.
Okay.
Then I became a designer of engineering systems, a project manager, team leader.
Very technical then.
Very technical. I was a chartered engineer.
Okay.
Well before the time I came into facilities and the operational arena. I then went across to University of Warwick, which was my first client-side role.
Okay.
Again, building services, project management. But as it was client-side and it involved operations, that was kind of the first step into what you would now call, or what I would now call, facilities management. I wouldn't have called it then.
Okay.
From then I went to UCL, again, very initially as a project manager or a design consultant.
So you were drawn to the city?
Yeah, well, I was living in London and commuting to Warwick. It was
a
recession back then at the time. And whilst it was a fantastic place to work, and I think the higher education environments are absolutely amazing places to work, the travel was a bit much, living in London. And then I became employed directly by the university and started working around performance and quality improvement and quality measurement and compliance. And then that then became facilities management. And I think a lot of people that work in the engineering operational arena may not have considered themselves to be facilities management. And I certainly wasn't aware of it until that point. But now, without a shadow of a doubt, I consider myself a facilities manager.
Okay. And you were at UCL for about 9 years. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a fantastic place to work. HE, I think, is one of the best places you can work client side. But there was a chap there, Jeff Prudence, who not only was my ultimate line manager and director, but also became a personal mentor. And he got me more interested in CIBSE, who I said before, the Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers, and BIFM, who became IWFM, the Institute of Workplace.
Changed its name, didn't it?
Yeah, Institute of Workplace and Facilities Management. And it was just through that transition that I saw myself perhaps less as an engineer and more as a facilities manager.
Okay, so to get my head around this is that you are a Chartered Institute for Building Services Engineer, and you've been there for about 10 years in that plus, and also the Institute of Workplace and FM, which is probably less techie but more overall encompassing of the FM arena. Is that correct?
Very much so. CIBSE obviously represent the interests of building services engineers and promote the art and science of building services engineering.
Okay.
Of which operational arena facilities management is one of them.
Right.
IWFM looks at facilities management as a whole. It's perhaps a little underrepresented on the hard FM side.
Okay, I was going to say that because obviously the Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers is more of the hard FM side.
It is. And then there's a third one that I'm involved with, which is IHEM, which is the Institute of Healthcare Engineering and Estates Management. I've probably said that wrong because we just all call it IHEM. And they are also a professional engineering body, but they concentrate on healthcare.
Okay. All right. I think I've got my head around some of those acronyms there. So, because I know that public sector do love their acronyms. But so just moving on a little bit, we can go back to that a little bit later. But what is it you like about your FM role now?
Now, well, at my level, this is by far the best job I've ever had. It's absolutely amazing. And I think that's because I'm surrounded by the best. I'm surrounded by a fantastic team, a fantastic client. Obviously, I am client side, but all the people I serve are clients and they're all committed to what they do and they're passionate. But I think generally with regards to FM, what is it I like the most about it is, well, you can start at any level.
Okay.
With any level of experience, with any qualifications. And facilities management will hold you and support you and transform you essentially into what you ever want to be. Because we do all of everything from the basic level maintenance to the cleaning to the hospitality, you can start anywhere and progress your way up. So many people start as bar staff.
Yeah.
Well, that's facilities management. Mm-hmm. Control-Alt-Delete. That's facilities management, and you can go up anywhere into FM, and then you can choose to qualify if you wish to do so. You can move around. It's a fantastic a fantastic industry.
I mean, it's an interesting thing you've touched upon, which actually our other podcast people didn't sort of touch upon, is that there are so many facets of facilities management. Where anyone that if they have a propensity, let's say, for hospitality, that may be their bag. If they're more of a techie person and like the hard FM, that may be their bag as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but very much so. You've also got logistics, you've got interior design, you've got landscaping, everything exists. Portering, there's nothing that you can really think of out there that doesn't touch facilities management, or importantly, that facilities management doesn't touch.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that, I mean, you're currently in a position with the East London NHS Foundation Trust.
That's correct.
And that's quite a big trust and stretches quite a considerable way up to Luton and Bedfordshire, I think, as well.
Yeah, we cover 500 square miles, give or take. So it's a big geographical area.
Okay. In terms of the number of buildings, how many buildings would that encompass, would you say?
So we as a trust we've got over 100 buildings, but the NHS itself has got thousands.
Yes.
I mean, it's got 1.2 million staff across the UK.
Okay.
So it's a very big organisation.
But in your remit, you have 100 buildings that come within your remit.
Yeah, we're 129, 130. It does change because as services develop, we take on more buildings. Sometimes we've got presence in other hospitals.
Okay.
As again, our services and scope develop.
See. I see. So, I mean, the third question I had, I mean, it was pretty obvious, but your industry or sector is healthcare sector. Is that correct?
It currently is. It's my first job within healthcare, and then just showing that facilities really is truly. You can really move your skills around. This is the first job I've ever had in healthcare. It's the first job I've ever had in healthcare estates management, and I'm the director of estates and facilities and capital development.
Going on to my next question is that which skills are required for your job? Obviously, you've had a long background also in higher education, FM,
Yeah.
and now you're in healthcare. But if you were to sort of summarize or to say what skill sets, what skills are required for your job now?
Well, there's so many transferable skills that you can bring into facilities management. But the thing for me is a genuine focus on the user experience and patient outcomes. And that means that you've got to have a true ability to listen and adapt to the environment and the events that you're currently working within. And certainly at my level, at the senior level within the organisation and within facilities, you've got to have an ability to be able to react to the new without getting stuck in the weeds. Perhaps a view of strategic over tactical, because in an operational arena, there's so much of the tactical or so much of the incidents or so much of the change that's coming in on a daily basis. You need to be able to deal with that and react while still very much concentrating on the bigger picture.
So, but now you are looking more from a higher level strategic point of view, but still with an eye on the daily operational things that come and hit your desk. Is that right?
You have to. And I think every director of estates, regardless of the environment they work in, will still have that. We are a 24/7 operation, so there's going to be things that are happening overnight that you need to be aware of and be briefed in, and ensure that you've got the team around you to be able to react and support to that. But you still need that visibility of what's occurring on your estate.
Okay. So putting myself in your shoes is that, what would a typical day look like?
Wow. Well, I suppose ask that of anybody and they might struggle to answer the question. But I think for a typical day for me is I need to try and bring in routine wherever I can so that I don't get stuck in the weeds. So I know what it is that I'm looking at. The day would obviously start with grabbing the phone straight away and seeing what's happened overnight. I think that's the most important thing, seeing if something has happened overnight that I need to...
You would do that from first thing in the morning once you get up, or when you into the office, or how would that happen?
Pretty much my days end and start pretty much in the same way. It's just checking that nothing's immediately happened that I might need to react to. But then when I've done that first thing, it's about getting out of the house and then either walking or cycling to work.
Okay.
I'm quite lucky, even with an area as big as it is that we cover, I base myself out of two main areas and they're both easily walkable or cyclable from home. But then obviously I've got to get into the office or whichever building I'm working in for the day. And it's about having those morning briefings, having a quick look over trade press, articles, news. This week in FN, Twin FM do an absolute fantastic daily and weekly update. So I always make sure I scan across that. So that's really about being briefed about what's happening both in the sector as well as in the industry. And then, of course, it's a plethora of meetings, visits, report writing, presentations, etc. Throughout the day. Most often there'll be something in the evening.
Okay.
I network.
You are a very busy chap.
I like getting out, and I don't know if there's a question later on about what's the best way to network with me. And it's not to send me an email telling me about your business, asking if you can come and have a cup of coffee. It's meeting me at a networking event, getting out, seeing other people, and having those more casual conversations as opposed to just hitting us with the amount of emails that I think anybody in my position gets is huge. You can't read them all. You can't react to them all. So getting out and networking is my way of meeting suppliers, consultants, and other professionals.
I mean, it's an interesting thing. So, okay, let's say you're faced with a typical day and you've got 100 emails. How do you manage those emails? Do they just not get read?
So it's about routine. So if I'm, I can't believe I'm saying this. So if I'm CC'd in an email, it automatically goes into a separate box. So I never see my CC emails. I read them maybe daily, most often than not weekly. If I'm CC'd, my belief is you just want me to be aware of something.
Okay.
So I'll generally never reply to a CC'd email.
Correct.
If it's a purchase order I need to approve, automatically gets filtered into another box, which I look at that just weekly, daily or weekly. If it's an email from Central, so I know if emails from NHS England or other things are coming in, that gets automatically filtered into a different email box. So when I'm at my computer, I can see all these email boxes and I can see the numbers going up. If I'm on my phone, unless I choose to look at them, I just see my inbox. So I see the type of things. And if I can see it's from a supplier or I can see it's nobody I've got any contact with, I may look at it. I may not. I may just swipe left and delete. If it's something I need to deal with, I move it back to unread. And my rule is 50. So I'll have a maximum of 50 unread emails because that means there's 50 I've got to do something with. So that's my routine of how I control my email box.
I would imagine, obviously, in the NHS, there would be a lot of those emails coming in on a need to know or be aware of, and the CC ones. So I hear what you're saying. I just wonder what sort of thing I would put in the subject line to be on the top of the list there. That's all.
I'm trying to think, but even if I could, I wouldn't say it in a podcast.
Okay, thank you for that. So, what would you say, David, to someone by way of advice if they were starting their career off in the FM sector or arena, as it were?
Network.
But networking, I'm a young graduate, let's say. How am I going to network? Where am I going to go?
So there's industry events. I think that's the key thing to learn, and the majority of them are free. And you can find out about them free. So IWFM, CIBSE, RICS, IHEAM, they all put on events. They're all advertised.
Okay.
They're generally free to attend.
Yep.
They're in all of the major cities. A huge amount of them are in London. And they're often based upon some kind of CPD.
Okay.
So there will be some kind of presentation or lecture.
Yep.
It could be supplier based. So imagine that Hawkey Cleaning and Supplies are presenting one. You will talk about new cleaning techniques, perhaps. You might give a little bit of presentation on yourself. You might bring somebody else in to talk, and then there's networking afterwards.
Okay.
That's the difficult bit. The difficult bit is the networking and not to shrink into the background. So if I was somebody new coming up, I would try and make it right. If I'm going somewhere and this is something I've done, I want to speak to 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm quite shy and introverted, and I
can't believe that, David.
Now, if I go to an event, the chances are high I know a few people there, so the conversation becomes easy. But when I go to an event, I don't, or maybe a work event, because obviously we've got 10,000 staff, so I don't necessarily know everybody. I will try and speak to at least 3 people.
And you kind of force yourself into that situation of 3 new people.
You do, and you prepare. Just some pre-questions. That's what chit-chat for me is all about. Just preparing. What am I going to say to somebody I don't know? And if you work in business development, David, you obviously have a patter yourself. And I'm quite sure Ethan's got a patter as well of how you start that conversation. But somebody new into the industry, that's what very much I would recommend. And you've got to get this ability of having a conversation.
Yes.
Because if you work in FM, even back of house, FM is not about the buildings, it's about the people. And therefore, you need to have these people skills and you need to develop those people skills. So get out there and start introducing yourself. So in the workplace, you're very, very easy to communicate with and you're very comfortable having conversations with people. So that would be my biggest event. Continual learning. Get to events, do the networking, join an institution, progress, develop. And I've said it before about suppliers. If you wanted to get into FM or a different area, go to these events, register. They're free to attend. They're advertised openly. Turn up.
Yeah, I think that's a very sound piece of advice to many of our listeners in terms of getting out there and networking. I suppose it's a bit like a trainee lawyer would go and sit in a courtroom and watch a particular a verdict or something like that. So, but this is the same type of thing. Ultimately, obviously, these young people coming through facilities management will eventually have to have those interpersonal skill sets to become managers, directors and stuff, and managing a team of people.
Quite.
So it's not wasted skill sets in terms of getting out there and stuff. So now moving on, just looking specifically at facilities management, where we are today, has the way facilities management changed over the years?
I think you'll probably get this answer from a lot of people that you interview, but COVID overnight changed how FMs operate, and more importantly, how FMs can impact a business. Real estate and workplace use has completely changed.
Correct.
So then FMs have had to adapt to that. The technological changes that we've seen over the last decade and the next decade are all going to affect what we do as humans, let alone what we do in the workplace. And that strategic and commercial contribution that facilities managers can make to an organization, I think, has been completely transformed since COVID.
Yes.
And now with workplaces, I think perhaps they need to churn and restack and change a lot more than they used to, and relying on your FM to kind of have that skill set. And you mentioned earlier on, BIFM changed their name to the Institute of Workplace and Facilities Management. That focus on human well-being and staff and visitor well-being over just facilities management, and that shift to workplace over FM has been, I think, one of the biggest changes. And then I suppose, finally, it's got to be about the data, and that links to the technological changes.
Okay.
Data's the new oil. Nothing more. There's nothing more important than the use of your property and your assets to an organization's success. And having that solid understanding of your data is so important, regardless of the size of your organization. Understanding your data, how your assets are used, how your assets contribute to the organization and to the success of the organization has never been more important than it is now, I would suggest.
Okay. I mean, I'm going to push you a little bit on this one, is that with the NHS, it is a very big let's say monster to turn and change and develop and stuff, and obviously it's very there is a lot of inpatient care and things. So has it had to, I mean, it doesn't, obviously it can't adapt to hybrid working because you've got patients there 24 hours a day and things like that. So you're saying it's more looking at the data on how the space is being used rather than how maybe your office space is being used, or what's how has it changed? Basically, what I'm trying to get at is that how has it changed significantly quickly? Because NHS doesn't move quickly, as you know, in certain changes and stuff. So how has it been able to do that?
It really moved very, very quickly in COVID.
Okay, yeah.
You know, we had to massively change our functional and our digital offer. And how that happens. But there are 219 trusts in the UK.
Okay.
So I think you use the term big monster, not necessarily the term I would use. But you've got 219 trusts governed and ran by 42 integrated care systems which procure the services through the trust. So you've got that change at local level.
Okay.
But yes, there's hybrid working. And yes, lots of people now work differently to how they used to work. And COVID has facilitated that. But it's also really helped with recruitment.
Right.
So somebody now that I've got new members of staff that live in Dudley and down in Bognor Regis and across to Chelmsford, because they don't have to be based near the office.
Okay.
Clearly, there's a need for them to be in at times.
Right.
But there's some roles, maybe help desk staff, where you don't need to be in the office permanently.
Okay.
And the NHS, or certainly my area of the NHS, is really looking at how we can develop that. But face-to-face is important, and we are moving away from Teams meetings to face-to-face meetings.
Great.
But I get a lot more done by Teams, and I know I'm more productive than Teams, but it's not just about your productivity. You have to be face-to-face. You have to be visible. So you might see yourself as having less work done if you're going out for face-to-face meetings, but that human contact that we all get from work has to be considered as equally important as productivity.
Okay, yeah, I hear what you're saying on that. Now, you mentioned about COVID and how obviously we live in a different world now post-COVID, and whilst it's still ongoing, we're learning to have to live with it. Do you think COVID and the way that we work has kept, let's say, suppliers like ourselves, Hawkey Cleaning and Support Services, and procurers more at arm's length than before?
Well, my experience is we work a lot more closer than we used to before. If any of my suppliers are listening to this, I really do hope they agree. But we couldn't have survived through COVID in the HE sector or the NHS sector, or the healthcare sector, without our supply chain.
Okay.
You know, we couldn't have done what we had to do, the change and the churn we've had to make in estates and in digital without our service partners.
Right.
Has meant that we're working a lot more closely together, aligning our strategic objectives, which we do through procurement, of course, and working really closely together. For me, the partners are an essential part of my team. I hate saying my team, our team. And when I talk about the numbers that work in estates, I'm not talking necessarily about the directly employed.
Right.
I'm talking about our service partners, their staff, and we all contribute to the same thing.
I hear what you're saying, and no, that's a very, very, very good point. So moving on, just on this question is, how important are equality, social, ESG issues affecting today's procurement decisions?
So I think from a procurement decision point of view, ESG, so that kind of environmental, social and governance are extremely important, and they're probably as important as sector experience. And I think that's important for a procurement decision, because it's hard to break into a new environment. It's hard to break in with a new client in a different sector.
Okay.
So you may not have direct experience of working within wards or within care homes, but you've got great experience of cleaning student bedrooms or hotels. So there's a lot of lined experience, but having good, solid ESG and how an organisation truly operates is a really important part of procurement decision making. And how else can you evidence that other than good, solid ESG values? And you can do that at any level. You don't have to be a huge organisation to have a good, solid, reliable and authentic attitude towards ESG.
Okay, thank you for that. And obviously, ESG comes up a lot in pre-qualification questionnaires and things like that from a supplier's point of view. So it does score very highly on that.
It has to, and if you say it, you have to prove it.
Yes,
that's it from my perspective. And fundamentally, I think if you've got ESG right, then you've got the governance of your business right.
Yeah,
and you're focusing on the right areas. And as an employee of one of these organisations, then you really do have to live the ESG values. And as an employer, you want to make sure your employees do and truly do to be successful, I would suggest.
Definitely. It's not a question here, but it's a question that I just thought of on our acronyms whilst we're on them, is the EDI. In terms of equality, diversity and inclusion. So how do you think the FM industry, and this I've fired this as I understand that I haven't briefed you on this one, but How do you think the FM industry has embraced EDI over the last few years?
I think the first thing, and I think I would now say equity, diversity, and inclusion as opposed to equality. So giving everybody an equitable opportunity, and that means that some will obviously have more assistance than others. But I think facilities management has got to be the most diverse sector within the workplace.
Okay.
Because if you look at all of the people that we employ, from domestics through to boardroom, or as we say it, from ward to board, and looking at that a whole has got to be the most diverse employment organisation that you can have, or not even organisation sector, I think. So how has facilities grasped it? I think that they've really grasped it, and I think that we have to, because bottom line, FM's about people.
Yes.
And if you're providing a facility service, be it as an in-house or an external, or simply as an employee, you've got to be looking after your people. And you can't do that without a good EDI framework. And again, I think you can have that at any level. If you're a small organization with 4 or 5 people on your board, you could still have a meeting once a quarter where the agenda is EDI, where you go through what the metrics are, what targets you're going to set yourself, and how you're going to advertise what you do.
So it's not just a tick box?
Definitely not.
But you're talking of metrics. So
yeah.
Is it necessary to demonstrate those metrics?
Yeah, because data's king. So if you say it, you've got to prove it. So the thing is, you've got to be authentic in everything that you do. And yes, it's important, because you commented earlier on that it's pretty much on every single tender submission now, be it private or public, or even third sector experience. And now I think it's 90% of companies report on sustainability. Yeah,
I mean, it does get a lot of weighting now. And I am also aware that the East London NHS Foundation Trust, I mean, your 3 key words are care, respect, and inclusivity.
Quite correct.
Which is commendable.
And it's truly believed. That's what I said right at the beginning about working with great people on my client side as well as within my team. And I don't think I've worked in an organisation before where that is so apparent. Those 3 values are so apparent and go through the entire organisation. So if you were to compare it then with the working in the higher education, would you say that it's better? Personally, I find my role better, but I was at UCL for 9 years, and they're an amazing, fantastic employer that really, really focus on the student experience and providing the best education. But for me, this is the first organisation I've been in where I can see the values transitioning through every member of staff that I engage with.
Okay, thank you for that. So how important are sustainability issues with a supplier that you work with?
I suppose we kind of link that to the previous comments. That, well, first of all, sustainability is more than just net zero carbon.
Correct.
It's about business-focused sustainability and sustainable business practices, not just focusing on the environmental aspect of sustainability. But of course they're important, because sustainability, decarbonisation and NZC, they're global issues across all of society. So as a business, if you're not embracing that and doing what you can to tackle it, you're not going to be particularly successful. And then your employees going to really want to continue working for an organisation that doesn't truly support sustainable business practices in all that it does. And it must be part of your decision-making process. It's not the race to the bottom. And even as an organisation that I imagine you buy. So how you buy, you must have a sustainability measure from which when you buy your products.
We do. I mean, what's interesting, though, is that some of the targets for the NHS, I seem to remember reading, were not as ambitious as they could have been.
Well, we've got to be...
there was one, I remember reading something, a 2050 target.
So the one that we're working to is 2040.
Okay.
So 2040.
It's quite a long way off.
It's quite a long way off, but we need to be 80% by 2028.
Okay. Do you think the NHS is wasteful?
I don't think any more than any other organisation. I think we're acutely aware of if there is waste, where it is. And no, I don't think the NHS is wasteful.
What would you say, David, is your biggest regret in your career to date?
None that I'd care to admit on here, I don't think. But mistakes are learning opportunities, and they're essential to career and development. I'm sure when I'm about to meet my maker, I might regret the hours that I've worked, and I might possibly regret not retiring early enough. But I'm really happy in what I do now. I've made mistakes, definitely. There was when I was
the regret, though. What would you say? I mean, the fact that you acknowledge it's a good thing, but there must be something. I wish I'd done that differently.
As a regret, I really enjoy the job that I've got now. So could I have done it earlier? Could I have done it quicker? As a junior design engineer,
okay,
I moved around a lot, and you still see that repeated. And perhaps now I regret having moved around so much, chasing like the odd extra couple of thousand. So I would certainly have done it differently. So maybe I regret that now. But at the time, in the moment, did I regret it? Well, of course not. It was a decision that I made, and I'm generally happy at work, and that really helps. But perhaps I could have got into the operational arena a little bit earlier,
okay?
Because I really enjoy FM, and there's a saying, I think, or there's a metric, and it's called the 1-10-200 principle. So if you spend £1 on building a building, you're going to spend £10 on maintaining it and £200 operating it from a business operation expense like staff, etc. So taking that, say, for the shard, so the shard costs £1 and it's going to cost 10 times that to operate it. Would I rather manage and operate the shard or have built it? I'm going to have more impact on the use of that building and the energy efficiency of that building over its entire lifetime and its churn and its restack by operating it. So, yeah, perhaps I could have got into it slightly earlier.
Okay. I mean, it's an interesting theme, that, because some of our other podcast people actually had a similar thing where they wanted to be involved a lot earlier in aspects of their career. So it's an interesting thing. So I would say to our listeners is that don't leave it too late. So that you don't have so many or have any regrets.
And embrace your mistakes. You're going to make them.
Of course.
Just don't hide them.
No. David, so what is, now on a sort of flip side, what is the greatest achievement in your career to date?
Oh, there's been so many, but the greatest. So not having had a successful school life, when I graduated the first time, I can still remember crying when I got my results. And even now I'm getting emotional, really struggling with maths at school.
Okay.
And then getting a degree which had
so
a
much
maths element. Yeah, engineering and maths, they go hand in hand. So I've got 3 university degrees now, which I'm extremely proud of. Getting chartered, so becoming chartered was definitely an achievement for me to know that the industry had validated my career and experience to say, yeah, you're good enough now to be chartered. And then becoming fellow. So becoming fellow of my institutions, and
because you're on judging panels and everything, aren't you?
Yeah, I like to be active. I know people say, "Oh, I want to give back." I'm not sure that's the phrase I want to use, but I can't bring anything else to mind. But I enjoy my industry, and I really want to help people succeed in the industry. And judging, and then because you judge, you can advise people on what to write on the judging things, and you can help people grow and develop. And of course, the benefit of judging is you go to the awards ceremony. So there's always a bit of a, why are you doing it? Well, I get to go to the awards ceremony, not buy a ticket. And then network with all of those people.
Oh, there's a lot of networking at those events, I'm sure, and it's good. I think you also get the impression you quite like mentoring people as well, and seeing people getting through their career and things like that. I think, which is excellent.
So I do both. So I have mentors, I have mentees, and I do reverse mentoring as well, where a junior underrepresented member of my organisation, I'm the mentee and they mentor me on what their lived experience is and what their work life is like.
Okay.
What, as a 50-year-old white gay man, I should know about their life and how it's like for them to work in an organisation.
Right. So it's almost you're getting there to the shop floor and getting down with it.
Yes, but somebody that's underrepresented in the organisation that's got a lived experience that, whilst I could empathise. So my mentee is a black female.
Okay.
Of course, I've got no experience of what it's like as an immigrant black female working within nursing, within East London, being a single mother. A lot of that I've just generalised just to give an example. But I could assume that I could know what it's like for them.
Okay.
But without that direct contact and without being told to go away and read this book and go away and understand this or go away and watch that film, I would never have thought that.
Okay, so that lady, she's not in the FM side though. She's
no.
It's on a completely different aspect of the healthcare.
And it's important that they're not within your line of responsibility as well. Yeah.
Okay, so and what things in life? I mean, you mentioned you're quite a workaholic and stuff, and you'd like to not like to retire, but like to have some downtime and leisure time as well. But what things in life, work or leisure, gives you the greatest satisfaction and enjoyment?
Well, I'm certainly not a workaholic, but I enjoy my job.
Okay.
So I imagine perhaps what everybody would say, obviously family, travel, food, and walking the dog on the beach in the morning. We're lucky enough to have a house out of London as well. When I'm down there, walking the dog, and we're down there most weeks. So that is absolutely great just to switch off. And I don't know how anybody could not enjoy being on a beach, even if it's 7 a.m. and it's chucking it down and the dog's ears are blowing against the wind.
I'm not convinced on that one, but
it's still an amazing place to be. But what else? So seeing others exceed and helping others develop.
Okay.
And succeed. It gives me great joy. And I really enjoy the networking. And as I think you've mentioned, I do sit on a number of boards and those are voluntary positions. And I really enjoy contributing to that. And I'm very grateful that I've got employers that have always supported that. So that blended work, that blended thing of work and social, again, just makes work a little bit more enjoyable than perhaps it could be for others.
Thank you very much for that. I don't have any more questions, actually, and I think it's been very, very engaging. So that's actually the end of our podcast, Wear Many Hats. We hope you found it interesting to listen to. We'd like to thank David Stevens for taking the chair today. It has been, yet again, thought-provoking and engaging. We welcome your support and feedback from our listeners. Thank you once again, David.
Thank you so much for having me.